Once upon a time in a small African village, there lived a young girl named Hawa. She had never known a mother's love. Her parents died when she was just a baby, leaving her in the care of her stepmother, Madame Claris. Claris was a beautiful woman on the outside, but her heart was as cold as stone. Claris had two daughters of her own, Mamuna and Salimata, and she adored them. They wore the finest clothes, ate the most delicious food, and spent their days laughing and resting under the shade of the baobab tree. But for Hawa, life was a different story. She was treated no better than a servant. Her day began before the sun even rose and ended long after it set. She cooked for the family, cleaned the entire compound, washed piles of clothes, fetched heavy buckets of water from the distant river, and gathered firewood from the dense bush. Her small, bare feet were often cut and bruised by the sharp stones on the path, but no one ever noticed, or if they did, they didn't care. If Hawa dared to slow down even for a moment to catch her breath, Claris's sharp voice would cut through the air. "Have you finished cleaning the pots?" she would shout. "No, madam," Hawa would reply softly, her voice barely a whisper. "Then hurry up. You lazy girl! You will not get a single bite of food until every chore is done." Hawa's only escape was in her dreams. At night, when she finally lay down on her thin mat in the corner of the kitchen, she would dream of a life filled with freedom, love, and peace. Despite the constant suffering and cruelty, Hawa never lost her gentle spirit. She remained kind and respectful to everyone, even to the woman who made her life a living nightmare. The villagers saw her quiet strength and admired her resilience. As she passed by, they would whisper to each other, "Look at that child. Her heart is pure gold. One day, God will surely bless this girl." These words of admiration didn't go unnoticed by Claris. Instead of feeling proud, she was consumed by a bitter jealousy. "Why do they admire this worthless orphan?" she would mutter to herself, her heart twisting with envy. "What is so special about her?" One evening, as the sun set, casting long shadows across the village, her jealousy festered into a truly evil plan. The very next day, Claris spent the morning in the kitchen, a strange, unsettling smile on her face. She prepared a delicious pot of jollof rice with big tender pieces of chicken, a meal Hawa was never allowed to touch. But this time was different. When no one was looking, she secretly stirred a dark powdered poison into the fragrant dish. With a sickeningly sweet voice, she called out, "Hawa! Hawa, my dear! Come here." She presented the steaming plate of food to the young girl. "You have worked so hard today. Here, take this and eat. You deserve it." Hawa was shocked. This was the first time Claris had ever shown her an ounce of kindness. She was suspicious, but her stomach ached with hunger. She hesitated, her hand trembling as she reached for the plate. But before she could take a single bite, her stepsister Mamuna burst into the kitchen. "What is this? Rice and chicken?" she cried, her eyes wide with greed. "Why are you giving the best food to this servant?" Without another word, she snatched the plate from Hawa's hands and began stuffing the food into her mouth. Hawa watched, stunned into silence. A few moments later, a horrifying scream tore through the compound. Mamuna clutched her stomach, her face contorted in agony. She collapsed to the floor, gasping for air and vomiting blood. Within seconds, her body went still. She was dead. Hawa froze, her heart pounding in her chest. A wave of ice-cold horror washed over her as she understood exactly what had just happened. The food was poisoned. It was meant for her. When Claris returned and saw the lifeless body of her favorite daughter, her grief instantly turned into a blind, terrifying rage. She didn't blame herself. Instead, she pointed a shaking finger at Hawa and screamed, "Witch, you killed my daughter. You used your evil magic on her." From that day on, Hawa's life descended into an even deeper level of hell. Claris's cruelty knew no bounds. Hawa was forbidden from eating any food prepared in the house. She was forced to work from sunrise to sunset under the scorching afternoon sun, with no rest and no water. To survive, she had to scavenge for wild fruits and roots she could find in the bush. One sweltering afternoon, as Hawa was struggling to carry a heavy bundle of firewood back to the village, her body weak with hunger, a well-dressed man on a motorbike stopped beside her. His name was Serge. Seeing her struggle, he kindly offered her a ride home. Hawa, though exhausted, politely refused. "Thank you, sir, but I can manage," she said with quiet dignity. Serge was deeply touched by her humility and grace. He followed her from a distance, all the way back to her compound. Later that day, he returned and asked Madame Claris for Hawa's hand in marriage. Claris's eyes narrowed. She saw a chance for personal gain. With a wicked smile, she began to lie shamelessly. "Oh, that one? Hawa?" she said, shaking her head. "You don't want her. She is immoral and carries a terrible sickness." "But," she continued, her voice changing, "I have another daughter, Salimata. She is beautiful and pure." Believing Serge was a rich man from the city, Claris eagerly accepted his proposal on Salimata's behalf. Salimata, dreaming of a life of luxury, married Serge and left the village with her head held high, sneering at Hawa as she departed. But her dreams quickly turned into a nightmare. She soon discovered the truth. Serge was not rich. He was a poor man who lived in a single cramped room and worked as a tout, a bus conductor, at the chaotic city bus station. Her new life was filled with poverty, hardship, and soon her husband's drunken violence. Her pride had led her straight to misery. Back in the village, Hawa's quiet suffering continued. One day, while reaching for ripe mangoes in a tall tree, she met a young man named Gabriel. He was dressed in simple clothes and had a kind, gentle face. He helped her get the fruit, and they sat and shared it. They talked for hours, sharing their stories, their pain, and their dreams. A deep connection formed between them. A few weeks later, Gabriel came to Hawa and asked her to be his wife. He didn't promise her riches or a life of ease. Instead, he promised to stand by her, to work with her, and to build a future together, side by side. When Gabriel went to Madame Claris to formally ask for Hawa's hand, Claris laughed in his face. "You? A poor farmer wants to marry this orphan?" she mocked. "Fine, take her. You two beggars deserve each other." She gladly gave Hawa away, demanding nothing in return, happy to finally be rid of her. Their wedding was the simplest the village had ever seen. There was no music, no dancing, no feast. Just the two of them and a few village elders. But after the quiet ceremony, Gabriel took Hawa's hand and led her not to a humble hut, but to a magnificent, beautiful mansion on a hill overlooking the village. Hawa gasped, completely shocked. It was then that Gabriel revealed the truth. He was an incredibly wealthy man who had disguised himself as a poor farmer to find a wife. He wasn't looking for beauty or status. He was testing hearts, searching for a woman with true kindness, strength, and a pure soul. In Hawa, he had found all of that and more. He loved her for who she was on the inside. Sometime later, Hawa, now confident and radiant, returned to her old village to face Claris. She didn't come for revenge. She came for truth and closure. As she stood before her former tormentor, the sound of sirens filled the air. Police officers arrived and arrested Salimata, who had returned to the village in disgrace. They charged her with killing her abusive husband Serge in a desperate act of self-defense. Seeing her last remaining daughter being taken away in handcuffs, Claris let out a horrifying wail and collapsed to the ground. In that moment, she lost everything, both her daughters, her dignity, and any hope for peace. Her own evil had consumed her entire world. Hawa watched for a moment, then turned and walked away, her head held high. She was victorious, not through hatred or revenge, but through patience, forgiveness, and the enduring power of a good heart. This story teaches us a powerful lesson. Evil, greed, and cruelty always find their way back to the person who sends them out. True wealth is not found in fancy clothes or grand houses, but in the kindness and integrity of your heart. Thanks for watching. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that inspires. See you next time.